Yep, it's recording from the right channel. And we are good to go. I think I'll go to chapter 3 and then just go backwards.
I think we got to the end of chapter 2 already.
We got to the end. I don't think we're done with this. We were talking about Google cars, street view vehicles.
Yeah.
That was the last topic that we talked about. Has any one of you seen a Google car? The street view cars. Okay.
I think I've once seen a car with Google written on it. I was like, wait, why does that? What?
Yeah, they're all Priuses or Prii, and sorry.
It's a fleet of Prius.
Yep, Prii. And it's really cool that they can apply the technology from Urban Challenge. I'm pretty sure it's the same technology that they used in Urban Challenge, because Stanford University was a big player. They were one of the most competitive organizations within all the challenges. So I'm pretty sure that's the outcome of it, because Google has a very tight relationship with Stanford University. A lot of the CEOs, they have a lot of close relationship with the professors at Stanford University. They're even proximity-wise, they're very close too. If you look up the headquarters of Google and look up Stanford University, they're actually pretty close, even by Bay Area traffic standard. Huh? They're pretty close. So, so that's one really good example of how technology that started off with a military purpose is now used for civilian purposes. And this is I think this is an interesting case where the technology was never really used in a battlefield before it got used by civilian purposes. Because a lot of times it's the opposite, like radars, okay? Radars were used originally by the military, by the British. Why did they need radars?
Submarines.
Not submarines, it's the other...
Airplanes?
Airplanes, exactly. And the interesting thing is they never shared, the Germans later on also had radars for the same reason, because they were bombing each other, a lot. So the Germans, also developed radar technology later on in the war, after the British had it. But the British never shared that technology with their allies. So the Japanese never got, the radar technology in World War II. That's kind of interesting. Any other, things you guys want to mention? Because, you probably have read this, and we have unmanned vehicles now, okay? UAVs. Now, UAVs are unmanned aerial vehicles. But how do they fly these days?
With a computer, like they have a pilot that's got like a display.
It still has a remote pilot.
Yeah.
But it's starting to get automated. Okay, they're already starting to make these UAVs be more autonomous. In other words, they do not need to be, in the near future, they would not need to be remotely controlled or piloted anymore. So they don't need communication, and there will be less chances of getting hacked. So technology is always, being used, or sometimes, it is always, funded. A lot of times it's funded by the military. What about, generators? Do you think fusion technology, okay, fusion, for energy purposes, who would fund projects like that? PG&E. Well, PG&E doesn't have nearly enough money to do that kind of research. But why would the military be interested in fusion technology? Now remember, we are not talking about a hydrogen bomb, which is also fusion technology. We are talking about fusion technology for the purpose of generating reliable power. Who would, what type of application will require that sort of thing?
Far out, like extended outposts, things like that, places where there's not readily available power from the local power grid.
How about
Nuclear submarines.
submarines and carriers? Okay, because right now they use fission technology, and it's not as efficient. Size-wise, weight-wise, they are not as efficient. So that's why the Navy is particularly interested in fusion technology, portable, controllable fusion technology. So we are talking about a lot of stuff that that can trace its root back to military applications. And that's the end of chapter 2. We are now moving on to chapter 3, which is kind of interesting too, because chapter 2 is supposed to be about hardware, but without hardware, a lot of this stuff here is useless.
About the military thing, I've actually done simulated combat training. I was in the Army for 4 years. I did simulated combat training while I was in there through like a virtual reality computer system. It was awesome.
So it's kind of like a first-person shooter type of simulation. Okay. Now, do you wear your full gear and it tracks your movement?
Full gear. What it is like you have your gear on, and then they give you a weapon system that is connected to.
So it's trackable by it.
And the interface tracks the movement of the weapon. So if the weapon moves like this, it'll track that, and it tracks your forward movement too.
Was it accurate?
Yeah. It was really accurate.
Yeah, nice.
So it will make itself available in your living room, very soon.
To give you an idea, we actually one of the things we had to do was like a marksmanship training on it, and so we did our marksmanship training on that, and then the next day we went out to the range, and like I shot the same between the two. So like I shot 36 out of 40 on one, and I shot 36 out of 40 on the other.
Wow, so it's actually very realistic.
Yes.
So now, when is Sony or Microsoft going to release that with their game console?
Hopefully with the Xbox 720.
720 means spinning around twice.
Yeah. Second look on things.
Second look on things. All right. Well, thanks. That's that interesting information. I did not know the simulation is now realistic to that point.
Yeah. It was a lot of fun. Let's put it that way.
And it's also inexpensive from the military's perspective because there's no actual hardware or firearm involved in the training, so they save a whole bunch of money doing that.
Well, normally, like to give you an idea of what it saves, normally when you go out to a range in the military, it's an all-day event. Like we're talking, you get to the range at 5 in the morning, you're not leaving until 10 o'clock at night. With that particular setup, our entire battalion, which is like 1,200 people, went through that training in less than 8 hours. So
wow.
It was fast.
Plus, you don't have to haul the all the hardware out to the field and haul it back, and have all the environmental groups complaining about spent cartridges and all the chemicals on the ground. So it's all good. I think Sierra Club will support it. All right, so this is the software chapter, and I think sometimes it's probably better not to separate topics into hardware and software. Instead, separate it by purpose, by what are you doing with it, because software and hardware are usually very integrated, and it's we'll take a look.
One doesn't really work without the other.
Sorry?
One doesn't really work without the other.
One doesn't work without the other, and they are, sometimes, it's hard to, talk about one without talking about the other. All right, so we'll get started with this chapter. It always starts with something like this. Is my software up to date? In this case, it is talking about Internet Explorer. Nothing is really up to date anymore these days. Okay, I don't care what you're using, what kind of software you use, or what operating system you use. Even if you use Linux, okay, it's never up to date. There's always an update available because of what? This brings us all the way back to something, well, maybe not, I have not mentioned it in this class, but why do you think we have all these updates?
Because of virus.
Sorry?
Because of viruses.
Because of viruses, because some people are actively trying to hack into systems. Because in the good old days, do you think, back in Windows 3.1, that, that operating system does not have any bugs to fix? But who's going to hack, Windows 3.1? There were hackers. How did they hack, Windows 3.1 and DOS systems? The internet? The internet wasn't really there yet. So how did they do the hacking? I don't even have a floppy right now. Floppy disks. Yeah, that's how they put, viruses on, because computers were not, for the most part, networked. Okay, maybe we have modems and bulletin boards for the most part, but even with that, the majority of PCs were not connected. Only the fringe people access BDSs. Most people do not. So the only way to spread viruses and worms or other malicious software was to share a disk with somebody. How fast can you spread a virus if you need, like, okay, we'll spread it by floppy disks? Not very fast, right? Okay, for the most part, it will be contained because physically, you can only spread it to people that are that will come into contact with your PC, or you can actually physically give a disk to, and that's a pretty small number compared to the people that you can reach by the internet today. So that's why Windows 3.1 did not have weekly or daily updates, because there was no need. But now, with the internet, we can spread malware a whole lot faster than using floppy disks. And that's why all the security holes, all the defects, they have to be fixed pretty much right away. Because if they don't fix it right away, a zero-day exploit will be will spread like wildfire in no time. I don't have the numbers. You guys can look it up to see how quickly a virus can spread if it has a zero-day exploit. Have I explained what is a zero-day exploit in this class? Okay, a zero-day exploit is basically an exploitation that has not been previously discovered yet. So the publisher has no defense against it. That's a zero-day exploit, and they are really hard to defend because the publisher, like in the case of Microsoft or Adobe or even Linux, they don't have any defense against it. So during the time between the exploit is out and before the bug is fixed, there's no defense against it. I mean, the only way is to unplug your computer from the internet. Otherwise, there's no easy defense. Okay? And that's why we have all these updates all the time, because we just have to keep everything up to date as quickly as possible in order to keep our system safe. In the past, Microsoft only released their updates on Tuesdays, and that's why it's called Patch Tuesday. These days, do they only release patches on Tuesdays? No, it seems like every time I have to reboot my Windows 7 machine, it's always applying updates. Is that your experience too? The frequency of patches has increased significantly over the past few years. What about this? Remember what I call this? This is a computer pretending to be a phone. Do you think it has patches too? Because it is just like a computer. It's running a complicated operating system with applications, so it still has patches to be applied.
It's called the eye patch.
It's called the eye patch. Funny. But I have an Android.
Oh, okay.
And just like with all the previous chapters, there's a categorization of different types of software. So we'll just take a quick look here and then figure out, what these things are. So the author separates software into system software and application software. What do you think is one common thing about system software? As far as the end user is concerned, how would you differentiate system software from application software?
System software comes with your operating system.
Well, it should.
It should. It's probably something that's already on the computer when you buy it.
Okay, that's good. That's a good differentiation. But what makes those system software and not application software? As an end user, which one do you care? Yeah, go ahead.
System software is what the computer uses to run, and application software is what you use for personal use, enjoyment.
Okay, I can separate it like this. For the most part, you really should only care about the application software. Okay, because most end users do not really care about defragging the hard drive or running virus scanners and stuff like that. All that stuff is to keep your system up and running so that you can do other things with your computer. Okay, if you think about your priority, if you do not have to do things that you don't want to do, what do you want to use your computer for? Do you enjoy looking at the defrag screen and see, the percentage crawl up, like every 5 minutes you crawl
hours
up?
to
Important enough to go with it.
Try half a day. Okay.
I was like,
Is that what you want to use your computer for? Just to see, the sectors getting moved around, so it's
Not
all
only.
nice and compacted. It's pacifying. I mean, it's a form of therapy, but
Yeah.
most people do not use it that way, right?
Yeah.
What do you use your computer for? Okay, we'll start with things that you guys like. Gaming, right?
Yeah.
You want to start with your computer and start to play some games. Social media, okay? You want to use your computer so you can communicate with all your buddies, your friends, your family, relatives. You want to check out, how everybody is doing. You want to use your computer for other kind of more boring stuff too, like homework assignments.
Yeah.
Not
Right?
want to.
Sometimes.
Kind of have to.
You want to use it to type up your resume, okay? When it's time to go get a job, you want to use it to type your resume, or if you want to apply for college, you want to use it to type up your college application, or do some research, okay? Which university do I want to go to? That sort of thing.
Financially.
So, sorry?
Financially.
Financial aid, okay, but it serves you, a purpose. It doesn't serve the computer a purpose, okay? So that's how I would separate these two categories of software. On one side, you have things that are needed in order to keep the computer up and running so that you can easily do the rest. That's how I would separate the two types of software. Utility is basically chores that you have to do, or tools for the chores so that you can keep the computer up and running. But from your perspective as an end user, this is what you really need in order to do things that are of value to you and not to the computer itself. Okay? Now that is a very important distinction, because I am thinking that in the near future, like in the next 5 or 10 years, this part of the entire branch will disappear. Okay.
It's too bad.
Why do you think I think that whole branch will disappear?
It'll be fully automated.
It will be automated for one thing, and the cloud is going to help make it happen. Now, why do you think the cloud would make this happen?
You could run the operating system from the cloud, and then you can use your own applications.
You can run everything from the cloud. Your application can run from the cloud, and then the maintenance of your system is a non-issue anymore. Okay? Now think about it like this. When you start with a computer, where does your computer get its operating system to start up and do all the, to give you the foundation? From the hard drive, okay? Or USB thumb drive, or in my case, sometimes the DVD-ROM. But what if I tell you that you can start up your operating system from the internet? In other words, the operating system itself will be transmitted to your computer over the internet. Is always the latest version with all the patches already applied. Then do you have to maintain anything?
That won't be as reliable, would it?
Why do you think it's not as reliable?
Because your internet is not always
Up.
functioning right. Like, let's say you don't have a faster speed internet, then it's not going to get up and running as fast as someone else's.
That's true. So you need a backup. You need a plan B in case the internet is not accessible for people who do not have high-speed access to the internet.
Or internet at all.
Hmm?
Or if your internet gets shut off, then you're kind of screwed.
Right.
Yeah, it's using.
So you just have to cache it. But for the most part, I think the internet will be getting faster and faster. That this, what I just said, will become feasible. In other words, your computer will become no more than a quote-unquote terminal where it runs very simplistic, software, as an operating system or a browser, and then the rest is done on the cloud. So it is no longer your responsibility to back up your data, to defrag the hard drive, or a lot of the other things that belong on the green side, and you can just focus on the purple side. Even the purple side will be residing, on the network and not on your computer anymore. So your visibility will only be the application software, but you don't have to maintain that software anymore. It will be automatically maintained. Now, almost everybody has a smartphone. When was the last time that you had to manually check and update the apps?
Last month.
Last month?
Yeah, because they released a new patch.
Okay.
Yeah,
they just released ICS and Sprint was withholding it. So the only way to do it was to manually update it. So I actually sat there all day, resetting my phone.
Okay.
That's when I got it.
Yeah, but not very frequently. But
No,
if
because you don't need to. Because
the apps can
because
update.
cell phone carriers, unless you have an unlocked cell phone carriers actually block what updates you get. So it's posted. And most of the time they do over the air, but hardly they do because it takes too much of their bandwidth. Because the number one problem with cell phone carriers now today is bandwidth. The end user is using way too much, and that's why they keep on cutting your data connection.
Mhm.
There's always a limit. There's a hidden limit written in your contract that after you pass a certain amount, that it will slow
it down.
It'll throttle down.
Mhm. Yep.
And I have actually seen it by going over on my old one. So after 5 gigs, it will throttle down to bare minimum nothing. You can't little crap for hours.
Mm-hmm.
So and then they start charging you more. So it's becoming a real problem. That's why they now try to offer you more talk time over your data charge. And
It's going back to the
Verizon
other
going,
direction.
Like, I'll sell you this new data plan that you're gonna
Mhm.
share. But the problem is that when you share with another person, you tend to overuse it, and you're still gonna get tagged on extra charges, and you're gonna be paying double, triple, whatever your original bill would be.
It's not really saving you any money.
But it's good for the carrier.
Yeah, it's good
Yeah.
for the carrier because then
Yep.
because I think they said this was a regulation on how much you can actually charge for data because people know how much bandwidth costs, so they can't really charge them too much, especially when it's only 3G or 4G LTE.
Mhm.
So they by doing this, by showing that it looks like they're saving money, but they're not, it actually helps them boost up revenue so they can buy more towers to increase the bandwidth.
Mm-hmm.
So like in other foreign countries, they use GSM networks, which are far more superior to the 4G LTE, but we can't use it over here because we just don't have that capability
Infrastructure.
over here. Yeah, the structure
Mhm.
over here. So that's why we get stuck with it. Over in foreign countries, it was you could actually, talk to someone face to face with the camera on the phone and start surfing the web at the same time and call another person at the same time. But here, because of the structural network is too slow, they can't.
Like
do
in
it.
Japan.
Yeah, in Japan.
Yep. In Japan, they don't have TVs anymore because
Yeah,
the
phone is
telephone is
cool.
replacing the TV and almost everything else. Credit card, near field communication is on the phone. But the original point I want to make is, your application on the phone, the apps can automatically update themselves for the most part. They do not require intervention from the end user. But what about your PC? When was the last time Adobe tried to update your system and pop up a screen and ask you, do you want to update your, Adobe Acrobat Reader? Or whatever. I mean,
2 days ago.
2 days ago, a few days ago?
Yeah. Not too long ago.
And that's a big problem because Acrobat Reader or PDFs is so common these days. And the format of PDF, I guess, is very susceptible to containing, malicious content, payload that can break into your computer. And when Adobe wrote, the PDF reader, software, they may not have thought about it as a security issue, and that's why they may have a lot of bugs or potential issues that can lead to security issues, security problems.
That's why they recommend you to download McAfee with it.
Well, that's McAfee, trying to, tap onto Adobe and say, for each copy that we sell through your, update of PDF reader, you can get like, X amount of money. So it's all about making money with all these updates. Every time I install something, it always asks me, do you also want to install this, like the ask.com toolbar and stuff like that?
Yeah.
And it's just a hassle. They have to uncheck, go away, uncheck. No.
If you accidentally miss one, then you gotta go through uninstalling.
Yep.
Like that.
At least it can be installed in most cases.
Sometimes they just.
Sometimes you cannot.
Yeah. You'd have to redo the entire process.
Yeah, well, that's why I choose, a different operating system to begin with. All right, so it talks about music software, and the iTunes is probably the most common one. I have no experience whatsoever of using iTunes, so I'm just reading it off the textbook. How about you guys?
Pretty.
Interesting. thing to say.
Interesting?
Yeah.
Microsoft speaking some state.
Because they don't have an equivalent.
No, I wasn't talking about that. When iTunes came out, it was only on Mac platform or Linux. You can make it compatible.
Mhm.
But a few years later it got popular, but Windows made it compatible with PCs now on Windows platforms. So that was the biggest mistake because the only thing that they had to offer at the time was Windows Media Player, and it didn't sell music. It didn't help you
it could
get the
only
music.
play,
Yeah, it only
right.
whatever you had.
There's
at
no
home.
store.
Yeah, there's no store. So the biggest mistake they made was to allow iTunes on the Windows platform by programming it for them and doing the work. So now you can have iTunes on your PC, so people don't use Windows Media Player anymore. And on top of that, then a few years later, they finally go like, I regret letting iTunes in the door. But now, no matter what, because it's already in, people can just use the older version if they don't choose to update it. But now, 2 years later, they came out with the Zoom, and it sucks, compared to what people are used to now. When you have a program a couple years ahead of you, you always prefer whatever was the original standard,
Yep, it's
unless
hard
you
to
make
break
it pop
out.
out.
Yep.
That's why, like, I heard in the new Windows 8, they don't even put a music player anymore, or something like that. Just integrate it into whatever the basic just player. They don't even try to sell you the Zoom anymore on the computer, on the operating system.
Because they make more money from selling media than having you guys to pay for Zoom or whatever player software that they want you to install. It's becoming more and more like that. People make more money from subscription, from ordering media and stuff online than selling licenses. Whether it's software or hardware.
That's the reason why the Kindle Fires are so cheap. They sell them at cost.
Or if it's legal, they would have sold it under cost.
Yeah. And then when you pay for the convenience of having something like Amazon Prime, that convenience makes you spend more money than you would if you were to buy it
Guilty.
at the price that you should pay for it, I should say.
Yeah. Well, Amazon is now, we have to pay taxes for Amazon purchases in the very near future now.
And you already
Which
It's now.
It's
So
already?
it happened.
Okay.
It happened on Saturday last week.
Okay.
But-
I guess I haven't ordered anything since last Saturday.
But
Yes.
I was trying to find a book the other day. It's still 10 to 20% cheaper, even with tax on it.
Yeah, because Amazon is going to cut the price down in California so that you can actually buy it for the same
And like
price.
when I think in San Bernardino County or city, they're building the new Amazon factory, 1 million square feet. When that goes up, there will be a free 2-day shipping for anyone in the California residents. So there alone, you already made back your tax. So they were not happy when the California government made them take tax in California, because not only does that, they actually have to work with the vendors that are on Amazon to collect their tax too.
All of those
There's
vendors.
a lot of little things that they had to now tweak now to
Yep.
get the algorithm right back to how it was originally. So when the government forced them to do this, and they know it was not going to last long, that they could hold it off. So there was a statement, I think, from one of their executives that said, if you make me charge my customer taxes, I will end most local small businesses. And right now, what they're doing by building a 1 million square feet warehouse in San Bernardino County, right in the middle of California, that could go up and down in less than 2 days shipping. So that will bring harm, a lot of harm, to local small businesses. Think about, you get they even do food now, so you don't have to go to the grocery store.
Interesting.
So
They can destroy all those people.
they will destroy all businesses going both ways.
It's a good threat.
But this is, I know it may not sound like it's related to this class. It certainly is not related to what we are talking about right now. But later on in this class, we also have to talk about the social impact of technology. And what you're saying is just, a few weeks ahead of us. Because it is social impact. When was the last time, you actually go into a store to buy something that you could have bought, online and know that it's going to be the same thing? Now, clothing is one thing that is different, because even though you can return easily, it's still a hassle to have to pack it all, back in and ship it back. But if you're ordering something that you already know what it is, and the performance, such as, a SD card, okay, flash card, and you know that you can wait in 2 days or so, for it to arrive, why do you want to pay, more money at a local store when you can just buy it online for a whole lot less, less money? To me, it's not even the saving of money, it's the saving of time. Because if I were to buy it locally, I have to drive, to a store, okay, buy, Best Buy or, Fry's or whatever, just to get an SD card. Whereas, I can just do it in a few clicks, wait a few days, 2 days or so, and it arrives, in my, in my mailbox in this case because it's small enough to slip into the mailbox. So it's changing, how we order stuff, and it's changing, how local businesses, what they can do to, to make money. What do you think? What do you guys think will happen to local businesses? Will they all just, kind of go up, and, there will be no local businesses anymore, or do you think they will just change the focus?
Yeah. Those who can't compete will either close, and those who know how to compete, they will try to go on technology, go on the internet. A lot of local businesses, the problem is that they don't have a website.
Mm-hmm.
You go into local business, mom and pop shop, you try to help them out to help your local economy. The first thing you know is that they're using an email that's something dot or at Yahoo or at Hotmail.
And it has been hacked for years.
They don't have decency to spend $5 a month to buy their own domain,
Mm-hmm.
just to have their name
A
out
presence.
there in the world. Yeah.
Yep.
A presence. It's just like $5 a month.
Yep.
The
Go
only
ahead.
thing that saved like Blockbuster was that they did their online services. That probably, if they didn't do that, they'd probably be out of business.
They wiped out by
Only thing that
Netflix,
saved
right?
them.
Netflix.
Yeah, just like
Redbox,
Hollywood.
all-
Gamefly.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, GameFly, they're just destroying them.
Sorry?
They all just destroying Blockbuster.
Yep. But what else can local businesses do? Because I think even though this class is not intended for businesses or owners of businesses, I think it's still good to think about it.
Partner with them. You can
Partner
use it.
with Amazon
Use
or something like that. Or would.
Become a vendor through Amazon.
Mhm.
That's probably the easiest way, because you're talking about Amazon, which is this very large company going up
Mhm.
against this very small company, and it happens in the business world every day. Anybody, whoever has the most money usually wins. So.
Or local businesses will shift into mostly service-oriented, businesses and not product-oriented businesses. So there will be a shift, of some kind in order for local businesses to survive. But they will survive. People will find a way to remain in business and make money, and have a local shop. So I think they will, it will just be a change. Now we are getting back to the music software. When was the last time you used iTunes or a desktop-based music player?
This morning.
Yeah.
This morning. But I thought most of you will be using a cell phone to
There
get
is
your
a
music.
application on
Hmm?
it. It is a music application.
Yeah, but it shows a desktop application
Oh, yeah,
in that
mine's linked to
case.
my desktop, though.
Yep. But when was the last time you used a desktop music management software? This morning?
I was playing the game.
Put music on my phone.
To put music on your phone, you can actually stream music directly from your computer to your phone these days.
From the cloud.
I was trying to.
But it takes up bandwidth though.
But I gotta find a way to get it through a NAS drive. A separate NAS drive.
A separate.
Like I have a RAID cage at home, and that's where I store all my stuff. But I'm still trying to figure out a way how to get it on my phone. It can see the home network and home computers, but I can't get it to work with it.
Do you have Android, or what do you
I have an Android.
Oh, that's easy.
have? I use
so-
Splashtop.
You can probably choose one of 20 ways to do it.
I know.
Or homebrew one.
Yeah.
But this is all good topics for a networking class, because what we are talking about here, what we are experiencing, is we don't want to keep things on one single device anymore. We want to keep it on a particular thing that is network or internet accessible, and we want to be able to get stuff out of the quote-unquote server anytime we want to. And it's not hard anymore. It really is not that difficult anymore. Most cell phones, most Android phones, you can download a SSH client, a secure shell client. And secure shell can do just about everything that you need to do. It can establish a tunnel, it can download files, upload files, and it's all encrypted also. So you can use it as a portal back to your PC at home, and you can get your files, you can store anything back onto your home computer as a server, and so on and so forth. So the networking is becoming more and more important. A lot of the software that we are talking about, it's really already out of date. So is anyone interested in app writing, app development?
Seems interesting.
Because we might have a class on app development next year. In 1 year, we'll have classes that will talk about app development. So that will be interesting.
App development on what
Platform.
Platform.
I will start with the Android platform. If you want to do the iOS, I think Fosun.
I don't really care about the Apple system because they are known to knock out applications that do not partner with them that make a lot of money.
Or potentially conflict with
or
Apple's
conflict
own
with it, yeah,
interest,
so,
right?
Yeah, so.
Yeah, Android will take out applications that are malicious.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit better, but you know, at least I can make more money off of it if it becomes a hit.
Well, you know, we'll get to that
Make
part.
the
You know.
next Angry Birds.
We'll get to develop software development and what you need in order to become a software developer. Okay, video software will still be something that you want to do mostly on a desktop computer, but even that is changing. Has anyone tried to use YouTube for simple editing stuff? Adding maybe captions, little boxes, you know, annotations and stuff like that. You can do it all over the web. There's no need to have your own software installed on a desktop computer anymore for simple editing, of video streams. And that means, people who are selling, this kind of software, they will lose market share because a lot of people don't need like super duper, video editing software. They just need basic, simple ways to, cut out certain parts of the video, attach the other part over here, and they don't need 90% of the features.
They don't need to be able to
Sorry?
place frames like you can in Sony Vegas.
Yeah. Or nor do they want to spend hundreds of dollars on software like that.
Yeah, that's why
I don't spend $100
Nero Free just a year older.
Mm-hmm.
There's no difference from the next year's version. So just get it out, just know when the new one's getting released. And prior, probably 2 months, the older version would get sold for free with a rebate. So it's just like, just go get it.
But video software has a higher demand now because it is less expensive to get your own camcorder, and most digital cameras will do a decent job recording videos as well.
There's a new camera that's on Android technology coming out.
Yeah, it's from Nikon.
Yeah, I know. So it's really, it's really nice.
We've been missing that.
Heidi took it, and she was using it on ours next door, right?
Thank you,
It'd
Rachel.
be funny if it just started shutting off when they were doing that.
And fortunately, it requires line of sight.
Yeah, it'll have the preloaded Android apps as well, where you do the editing.
And then we also have, from video, we are moving on to graphics. Now, graphics is a little bit different compared to music and video, because it depends on what the graphics is for. If it is for web publication, I just want to send a picture to somebody through Facebook. Hey, just about anything will work. On the other hand, if you are producing something for a magazine, something that is printed, or something that will be enlarged, you still need a desktop computer to do it well. There are different types of software for graphics software. Paint software, raster graphics editor is really a thing of the past. I really cannot imagine why people want to use Paint in Microsoft. You have photo editing software, Photoshop, which is a typical thing. But how big? Sorry, go ahead. Picasa. You can do some of that in Picasa, but Picasa you can only do it in Windows. Picasa does not have a native app for Linux.
GIMP.
The GIMP, yep, exactly. The GIMP is what I use. It has, I would say, about 85% of all the features of Photoshop, and it's free. And it also has a very small footprint. In other words, it doesn't take up a lot of disk space. It doesn't take a lot of RAM to run either.
Paint.net.
Sorry?
Paint.net.
Paint.net.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's online.
No, it's a program, but it's written in .net for Windows.
Oh,
But
okay.
it has like everything Adobe has
Mm-hmm.
that, added onto the Paint on itself. But it's really
Oh.
small and it runs really fast.
Mm-hmm.
You don't need that much RAM. I've used it on a 1 gig of RAM computer before, and it does wonderful
Okay.
work.
Paint.net.
Yeah,
It's in there.
Oh yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, right there.
Yeah, Paint.net, Corel Painter, but it's missing the GIMP because the GIMP is open source and probably do not have money to give to contribute to the author.
for it.
So no mentioning of the GIMP. Drawing software. Now, drawing software to me is a lot more interesting. What is the difference between Paint and photo editing? and how do those two types of software differ from drawing. Let me show you the difference. I can actually show you because I have everything pre-installed here. This is the GIMP, which is, you can look at it as a open source version of Photoshop. It's not quite as capable as Photoshop, but it does have a lot of plugins, and you can do a lot of things that you can do in Photoshop. So I'll just go ahead and go to a particular URL. So we'll look for something. Look for something that's that cannot be politically incorrect, like memory chips. Okay, so we'll go ahead and save. Copy image URL. And this is one thing that I can do in the GIMP, and pretty sure you can do it in other software too, is open location. So you can open it by URL or URI in this case. Yeah, okay, because that's probably just a link. Okay, we'll just click it first, get to it, and then get the image directly. Copy image URL, you go back to the GIMP, open location.
Oops, it isn't wrong.
Doesn't like it.
Can you just paste the picture itself?
Yeah, I guess.
Less tick.
So there we go. And with the GIMP, just like with Photoshop, you can do a lot of different things. If you look under tools, you have tools that can help you transform. And this is really quite interesting because you can actually fix a lot of the problems inherent to cameras. You have color tools. You can control the color balance, threshold. If you look under filter, it can even enhance the sharpness or the apparent sharpness of a picture. And there's a whole you just have to download the tool and play with it to see what else you can do with it. Sorry?
It's $10 though.
It's
$10.
No, it's free.
No,
it's
on
open source.
Bluetooth. I looked it up right now.
The GIMP?
Yeah.
Maybe if it's not for Linux, it may cost money.
No, it's free. It's available for Windows for free, for sure.
For Windows.
Yeah, but in Ubuntu you can just install it as a package. It has to be free.
Is there kind of like how fastfood.com as opposed to fastfood.gov?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe something like that.
Yeah.
It's part of GNU licensing. Everything has to be free and open source, or it can't be distributed.
Yep.
Under the GNU license.
But it doesn't stop people from selling it. It is still legal to sell it. You just have to tell people that they could have gotten it for free. Yes. that's the catch. Okay? People
Generally
can
the
still
tourism
legally make money from selling images or ISOs
But it
of
has to
Linux.
also be available.
But you also have to make it clear that it is also available for free, with under the license. Okay, so if I want to type something here, you can see that I have a text tool here, and I can just go ahead and type, this is a DIM, okay, it's a dual inline memory module, okay, and then I can type something else, and when I save it, I cannot really save it as just a bitmap because in that case I would not be able to make any editing of the text anymore. I cannot draw things like arrows and Bezier curves and stuff like that with this software. Let's see what we can do with something else. I have to export it now to a PNG. Okay, so I'll call this dimm.png, which is just one of the many formats for graphics. Okay, so export, and I'll go ahead and close this without saving. And then what I'll do is I'll open up another application which is of the other type. So let me go back to the notes or the textbook here. Now I'll open up another software which is a drawing software in this case. The one that I like to use is called Inkscape. You can also use LibreOffice. LibreOffice Draw, can do about the same thing, not quite the same. Okay, so this is a drawing software. You can see the tools are different. It doesn't let you do, sharpening of images and stuff like that. For the most part, it does not deal with images. What it does deal with are these tools. You can create a square. You can create, different types of shapes. But what is interesting about this is when you magnify the shapes, you can magnify it indefinitely, and you can still see very sharp edges. There's no rastering here. And that's because when you draw a shape using this software, it is not remembered as dots. Like this dot is yellow, this dot is black, and so on. It is remembered as strokes. How do I want to draw this star? From this location to this location is a black line. From this location to this location is a black line. And I want the interior to be filled with yellow color in this case. And that's why you can magnify at any type of magnification. I can continue with this, and you can see that it is still very sharp because it is actually drawn and not by pixels, but by the shape of whatever I'm drawing. Okay, so what this is really suitable for would be designing logos. If you want to design a logo, this is far more useful compared to just a photograph or a raster image. A raster image means it is stored by pixels. Okay, you're basically saying this pixel, this little dot here has to be of this color, this dot has to be of this color, and this dot has to be of this color. This is actually representing the picture by strokes. Now, because it is represented by strokes, you can now also have other options. In other words, you can draw Bezier curves or have your freehand drawing. So I'm going to do some freehand drawing here. And I'm just going to do some simple stuff here. Just write my name. Okay. And you can do about the same thing in, okay, that's not intentional. Okay, now you can do the same thing or something similar in the GIMP, okay, because it has a paintbrush. Okay, it has a pencil tool, it also has a paintbrush tool, and also a spray paint tool for airbrush effect. But in this case, once again, we are going to magnify, and you can see that the edges. I'm just I'm just magnifying this part here. You can see how sharp it is. It doesn't matter how much you magnify; it is always sharp. So that means you can use it for logo purposes. If you want to print it on a name card, you can make it very small, and it will look just right. But at the same time, if you want to project this onto a building and then start to paint it, it will look just as sharp depending on the projector itself. So it's limited only by the resolution of the output device and not limited by the file itself. When we save files like this, it is also a very small file by comparison. So let me go ahead and save this file. We'll save it to, I'll just save it here. I'll just call it demo. And we'll go ahead and check the file size. The file size is 8,727 bytes. So we're measuring in bytes, not megabytes here, or kilobytes. It's a pretty small file. Now, when you look into the file, you'll be kind of surprised to see what is inside this file. Has anyone ever tried to open up a bitmap file using a text editor? What do you see? Like gibberish, right?
Yeah.
This is actually a text file. In fact, for those of you who know HTML or XML in general, you can see that, hey, I can recognize most of this stuff here. It is really just XML. That's because SVG is a subcategory of XML. It's using XML as a container and then specify the strokes using SVG specific tags. So if you look down here, you can see special tags to control the layers and also the strokes and so on and so forth. That's the difference between SVG and a bitmap file because it's all text. If you want to, you can actually go inside the file and make changes here instead of making changes using the software because it's all represented in text.
So you can actually draw things correct? Like you could just save a base file and draw using code in here?
Yes, you can specify your own code inside the text file. Nothing prevents you from making changes to the text file yourself.
On the paper.
And then for people who are interested in programming, you can even automate the generation of SVG files. because it is just a text file. So if you know a scripted language like Perl, PHP, Python, and so on and so forth, you can generate these files if you know what you want and how to specify the logic of generating that file. So it is very useful, and most people don't even know about this kind of software because they think they don't have a need of a drawing software, but the application is actually quite a bit. I mean, there's a lot of application of drawing a drawing software as opposed to a paint software or photo editing software. What if I start with a picture and I want to annotate it in a flexible way? How do I do it? I mean, it seems like a crossover between the two types of software. Let's just say that I want to show someone how to get onto campus and get to this classroom. Okay, it's pretty easy to get the picture from Google Maps, right? You just go to map.google.com, you get to this location, and then you take a screenshot. Then you have a bitmap. But don't tell Google. Google doesn't like that. To cover the mic or beep it out. Okay. Well, it's a copyright issue. They do not, really want people to do it, on a commercial basis. But if you want to share your location and tell people how to get to your place, I don't think Google is going to come sue you. And then how do you add your annotation? Well, you can do it in the GIMP, using very, crude, arrows and, text and stuff like that. But you can also combine the two, different types of software. So I'll go ahead and just do a quick exercise here of how to do it, because I want to show you, how to use, these, various features. So we'll go to 700 College Oak Drive, and we'll turn on satellite image. And just going to zoom in. It's just a little slow.
If we check out the construction zone, we might be able to see how long ago this picture was taken.
Now, how do you turn it into a 45 degree?
That's a good question.
No, it's grayed out.
I guess they don't have
Bay
this
Area might have it.
particular.
I think I zoom in too much. Oh, okay, there we go. Now it's 45 degree. So I just have to zoom into the right, the zoom ratio.
Yeah.
So we'll go ahead and find this classroom. This is liberal arts. And I think, I could turn on my phone and know exactly where we are. Okay, let's just say that we are here. Okay, so this is a good picture.
Yeah, that looks like where we're at.
Okay, so what I can do is to combine the tools that I have. I can take a screenshot just by using the screenshot tool here. There's a screenshot tool right here. Or I can use the GIMP. The GIMP also has a tool to do that. So let me just use the GIMP. Okay, so we'll use the GIMP. And by the way, GIMP, G-I-M-P, stands for GNU Image Manipulation Program. Not exactly end-user friendly. So, okay, so we'll go ahead and say create. Now the GIMP, just like Photoshop, has many ways to get its the input. You can get it from a scanner. If I have a scanner attached that is Linux capable, I can actually get the image from the scanner directly without using an intermediate software. So in this case, I'm just going to take a screenshot. When I take a screenshot, it gives me all these options. So what I want to do is to take a screenshot of a single window, but I want to grab a region to grab, select a region to grab, and I want to put a delay too. So let's say we want a 5-second delay. There we go. And we'll just go ahead and select a particular region to grab. Let's say it's just that region. Now I have that image already captured in the GIMP. Let's go ahead and do some simple processing, because the GIMP is really good at processing pictures. So I can go to Filter and go to Enhance and go to Unsharp Mask, which is counterintuitive because what it does is to make it sharper. But it's called an unsharp mask for technical reasons. So you can actually control the radius, basically what type of how strong the effect. You can. I don't know whether you guys can see it. Can you see that when I scroll, it is fuzzy, but when I stop, it's a little bit sharper? So I'll go ahead and say, okay, this is a good setting. We'll click OK. It applies the sharpening filter. Sorry? Did you guys see the difference?
Yeah.
Okay. And we can also change the contrast. We can go to, I think it's a color tool. So we go to color and then go to maybe levels. We can make the darker stuff darker by compressing the range. I'm just trying to make the contrast a little bit better. Okay, so we'll just say this is good enough. Okay, I improve the contrast, I improve the sharpness, and now we'll go ahead and save the file. So I'll save the file to the home directory here. Oh, okay, I forgot to export, not save. So we'll go ahead and export to the current folder, and we'll just call it map.png. Thank you. And then we export it. Now when you export an image, as long as it is not too big, PNG is lossless. What am I talking about here? What is lossy and lossless?
You don't lose like
Details.
resolution.
Yep. We don't lose resolution, we lose details. It's just like with music encoding, the CD format, which is a WAV format, the particular format used by CDs is lossless. But when you try to convert it into MP3, it's lossy. When you convert it to different types of formats are different. What is the format used mostly by Microsoft devices? WMA. WMA is a generic name of a family of formats. Within WMA, they have lossy and lossless formats. So you can do a lossless compression if you want to in WMA. But not all players can play all different variations of WMAs. But at any rate, we're just focusing on images here. So I'm now done with the GIMP. And I'll just go ahead and close this and get back to Inkscape. So here's Inkscape. Now in Inkscape, what I can do, a few things. First of all, I can go to document properties and change the orientation. So I will go from A4 to US letter size and turn it into a landscape format. I can also change my display or default units from pixels to, say, inches. So this way it's easier for me to find out how big the picture is. Then I can go to File, go to Import, and then look up the file, which is map.png. Open it. Now I have a choice here. I can either embed the bitmap, which makes the file really big, or I can do a link, which means I have to distribute both the PNG and the SVG files together for someone to be able to see it. For this purpose, I'll just do the link, and I can go ahead and position the file over here. And now I can go ahead and magnify portions of it. Okay, that's liberal arts. So let's just say that I want to highlight liberal arts. I can go to Circle tool, and now I can draw a circle over that and go like, well, that's not going to be very helpful. People can't see what is under it, right? Right click, go to Fill and Stroke. Now I can control the fill, which is what is inside the circle or ellipse in this case. I can specify don't do anything, just do not fill, and I can change the stroke paint, the color, and I can use RGB, which is a red, green, blue. This is hue, saturation, and lightness. CYMK is cyan, magenta, yellow, black, which is used for printing purposes. But the best one, the one that I like to use the most, is the wheel format. Because you just go rotate the wheel to whatever color I want. Let's say it's a kind of purplish or fuchsia color. And then I can change this dot here from black to no saturation, which is gray, or in this case it's white, all the way to full saturation, which gives me the color. So that's how I can draw something. Now I can now save this file. After I save this file, and then later on I decide, hey, this line is not thick enough, I can come back and change the thickness of the line and then resave the file. You cannot do that with a raster file. Once you draw something on a raster file, you cannot easily erase it or get rid of it, or make it smooth, or make it bigger, thicker. It's just difficult to do with a raster file. Do we have any questions at this point? Now, I think it's pretty useful. Okay, I use this, a lot, when I need to give people directions. Just go to Google Maps, highlight what people need. And sometimes, with a campus map like this, if I zoom back out again, I can even draw, like a little, line to indicate, how to get to a classroom, because I can just highlight, a particular path. So this is how we can easily combine different types of tools and be able to, do stuff like this. If I want to change the stroke style, I can just change the thickness, just like this. I can change the thickness, and now the line is a little bit thicker to make it stand out a little bit more. Any questions at this point? No questions? Well, I have a question, because if I want to send this, new, highlighted or annotated, image to someone, I might want to change it back to a raster first, because the person that is receiving this may not have any software to open up SVG files. Well, that's actually pretty easy. What you do is you go to File, and then you go to Export Bitmap, and then you make sure you select the entire drawing. And now you have the option to choose the bitmap size. In other words, it can sample the bitmap or sample the drawing at 90 dpi, or change the resolution. This is the quote-unquote native resolution, which means I think this is a pixel for a pixel from the raster image, from the image itself. But you can change that if you want to. Yep.
I'm sorry, off topic. Roll sheet. Roll sheet.
Roll sheet. Yes.
Was any?
I need to set up my phone or the computer to send me a pop-up a screen to remind me.
Maybe you can make an app for that.
But I'm too lazy to write scripts for that. The easiest way is to write a cron job, just do it in Perl, make a pop-up at a certain time.
All right.
So I can now, select, the file name, and then export it. Then it becomes, just a bitmap again. I can attach it to an email, and then send it to the person, who is supposed to receive this annotated map. Any questions about, what I just did? It's a quick illustration of the concepts that we were just talking about in the textbook. And how much do you have to pay for this kind of stuff?
Free.
Free.
If
If
like
you pay a
100
buck,
something.
you're paying too much.
Like, you pay like 100 and something for Photoshop. For Photoshop?
For
Adobe
Photoshop?
You pay like
Photoshop have.
Dollars.
Hmm?
Thousands of dollars.
And how much space does it take up on your computer?
Oh, crap.
Yeah.
If you buy just Photoshop, it's $200. But if you buy the stuff that you actually need in order to be able to utilize Photoshop, it's about $1,200.
Well, the GIMP also has different plugins too. I don't know how many of you have a digital camera that can take what they call raw images. Does anyone know what is a raw image from a digital camera?
It's the highest, quality.
It's before it converts to JPEG or any other format. Okay, when you convert to JPEG, you lose a lot of information already. Because what JPEG does is, each pixel, not only does it make it more fuzzy, but when you look at one pixel on the screen, it is actually made out of 3 numbers. The 3 numbers are RGB, right? Because each pixel on the screen, on the projection screen, has a red, G for green, and then B for blue. It has these 3 values. Combined, they become a particular color of a single pixel. The resolution of JPEG says that R can go from 0 to 255. In other words, if you want a pixel that has no red component, it would have a value of 0. If you want it to be completely on as much as possible, it would have a value of 255. Same thing for green, 0 to 255, and blue from 0 to 255. So in theory, how many colors can I get out of 8 bits, okay, or 256 values for each color? So we are talking about 256 to the power of 3, which sounds like a lot of colors, right?
Seemingly.
Yep, seemingly there's a lot of color, but it's not quite enough for photographers. Why do you think it's not quite enough? I mean, this is like an insane number of colors. I mean, how can our eyes be able to differentiate that many colors.
Yeah.
What if you're trying to take a picture of a green field or the blue sky? So it's already blue to begin with. In other words, the R component is for the most part useless. The G component for the most part is useless. So you're now down to what? Just the blue component. And you only have 256 levels of that. Now, if you're looking at a sunset scene, where things are gradually changing, with 256 levels only, you will see the changes. Okay, it will be you can visibly change. You can see the border when it changes from the value 128 to 127, because there are not enough levels in between, and your eyes can now start to see the lines. You can start to see what we call artifacts in the picture. What do you think your digital camera is capable of when it's capturing the actual image? It's not capturing in 8-bit. In other words, your camera can see a lot more levels of differences compared to what the file JPEG can represent. Even a crappy, point and shoot camera these days probably has 10 to 12 bits per pixel. So we are talking about, this is, JPEG, okay? JPEG. JPEG is only capable of doing this. But when you look at the camera, internal to the camera, okay. You are talking about 0 to 1023 at least, even with a crappy point and shoot camera. If you have a digital SLR, you can probably go to 0 to 4095 or even more with each pixel. With each color of each pixel, you actually have a lot more information that your camera can capture. But once it converts it to JPEG to store that onto your SD card, it's down to this. So we are talking about a lot of information lost in the process. Yep.
You can also see like on an iPod picture, like I take a lot of sky pictures too, like during the sunset. You can also see that, like when
you can see the effect when the
changes.
color changes, right?
Yeah.
Yep. Because it has very gradual changes, and that's when you see the change most. So what do we do? Well, why do we want to have more than this kind of resolution? In other words, why do we want to represent even more colors? Because it seems like in the end, this is what you send to Costco to print. So in the end, we're still dealing with this kind of resolution. But what if you want to change? What if when you take a picture, okay, there's some highlight and there's some shadow area. Highlight means it is a lighter color, and shadow area means it is a darker color. In this format, it will lose either end. Okay, both ends will be lost. The highlight will be kind of washed out, and then the dark part will be all black. You cannot see any details anymore. But what if you want to crop the picture? In other words, of the picture, the highlight part you don't need anymore. You only want to emphasize on the shadow part, and you want to kind of increase the visibility of the shadow part. Well, once it converts into JPEG, it's already lost. You cannot just say, oh, increase the contrast of this part, because there's nothing left. There's no information left in the shadow area. So what the GIMP has and also other software can do is to read in a raw file. In other words, it's reading in all the information that your camera captured. And then at that point, you can do some processing. You can say, I want to change the contrast. I want to change the curve of the contrast to bring up the shadow area or to change the highlight area. And then you get it converted into the JPEG format. In other words, for those of you who really like to take pictures and want to have more control over your images and how you post-process the images, you have to work with RAW format. You cannot work with just the JPEG format after it is converted. And the GIMP cannot natively do it, but it has plugins to do it. It's called UF-RAW, and it can read in raw images and do a lot of processing before it gets converted into a less capable format. And it's also free. It's still free. So it has a lot of pro features, for basically free software. 3D modeling, now that's a lot of fun. I personally have not done any 3D modeling. I would like to learn how to do it, but I just could not find the time to do it. How much do you pay for 3D software? Or 3D modeling software?
A lot.
A lot of money or nothing?
I've seen it before.
There's a software, there's an open source software program called Blender, as in Blender, and it's free. So look it up. I'm pretty sure it's not mentioned here because it's open source. And by the way, what is open source?
Available above.
Well, there's a particular meaning. This chapter actually talks about the differences between freeware and open source. Go ahead.
Open source, anybody can contribute to. The code is out there and available for anyone to access, and they can make out of it whatever they want.
The license allows people to make changes to the source code and redistribute the software. Okay. So that's open source. It is not the same as as freeware or public domain. Okay, because when it's public domain, it is possible that the source code is not available. What is source code? Are we running source code here? We're not running source code. We are running the binary. We are running the compiled code. So the difference has to do with the processor. Okay, I think we talked about this a little bit. The processor can only execute instructions in very cryptic zeros and ones format that we don't like to program in. But we like to specify programs in a way that we know how to do it, like using statements like if, then, while, repeat until, that sort of thing. So now we have a problem because we speak in a certain language and the computer wants to execute program in another language that is native to the computer. So what do? Oh, by the way, which one is the source code? The one that I like to use or the one that the computer prefers?
Computer.
The one that I use. That's called the source code. The computer, the code that the computer wants to use is called either the object code or the executable. Okay, the two are not exactly the same, but for the purpose of our discussion, we can call it the same. Okay, so source code means what we can understand, the way we specify the behavior of a program, and that's really the most important part because I can always translate the source code into the code that the computer understands. So when you have, quote unquote, the source code of a particular program, now you can understand how the program works. You can also make changes to how the program works. And that's why that's the importance of the source code of a particular program. So what if I tell you that the source code of Linux, the operating system, the GIMP, which is an application program, they're all available for you, not only to view, but also for you to change. What is the impact of that?
Modify it however you please.
And also, exactly, it has two impacts. They're free. It's free and it's free. The first free as in free beer, which means you don't have to pay anything because now the source code is available. The tool to turn it in from source code to object code is also free. So you can actually run the program for free now because the tool is free and then the source code is free. So it's free as in free beer. But the second free is free as in freedom because now you can attain the source code and then you say, I don't like this way that GIMP works, okay? I want to change it. And you are an experienced programmer or you can hire an experienced programmer to do what you want it to do. And guess what? The license allows you to do it. Just because you can do it doesn't mean the license will allow you to do it. But in the case of open source, it is required that the license allows you to make changes. And then if you want to, you can say, hey, this is text super duper version of the GIMP, and I can release it to the world. And that's open source. How does that change the landscape of software publishing?
Makes big companies need to try harder.
Well, let's see what big companies do. What do you think Microsoft would do? Okay, how does Microsoft treat the source code of its products, like Windows and Microsoft Office and stuff like that? Does Microsoft let you look at the source code of their products?
Not at all.
No, it is called proprietary, okay, because it is closed source. Okay, you cannot see the source code. Okay, fine. Does Microsoft let you get Windows 7 or Microsoft Office for free?
No.
No.
If only.
Okay. So how does Microsoft make money? We'll talk about that later too, but I just want to move that topic a little bit ahead of time. How does Microsoft make money?
selling their products.
Selling the product, but particularly, or more specifically, they sell licenses. Okay? When you go to Fry's, you go to the shelf and then you buy a shrink wrap software. What are you buying? You're not buying the plastic case, you're not buying the CD inside, you're buying a license. What exactly is a license?
It is basically a number, an alphanumeric number that says that you have a right to use this.
You have the permission to use the software in a certain way.
Yeah.
And the certain way is dictated by the EULA.
Yeah.
Okay, EULA, EULA stands for End User Licensing Agreement, or License Agreement. And that basically spells out all the terms that you have to abide by when you install and use the software. And it's changing all the time. How many of you have read the EULA of any product? Okay? Now with a Microsoft product, a recent one, if you find a flaw in the software, what can you do about it? Can you tell the world, can you tweet it and say, you know what, I found a bug in Microsoft Office. When I do something like this, it doesn't work. Can you do that?
You have to tell Microsoft immediately is what the EULA says.
Exactly. What if you do it the other way? Which law or which act? Okay, what law have you just violated if you just tell the entire world and say, you know what, there's an easy way to get around this, feature of Microsoft, whatever product, and this is how you do it. What if you tweet it out to the entire world? Has anyone heard of the DMCA? The Digital Millennium Copyright Act. Now what it says is actually quite limiting to us, to consumers. We'll just take a quick look, because we only have 1 minute left, but I do want to end with this note for this class. It's called the DMCA, or the Digital Millennium Copyright Act. You can look it up in Wiki. It's very long, but in essence, software companies can tell you, or under the DMCA, for security purposes, okay? If you find any flaws, with a particular software product, you cannot just make it, and say, you cannot just announce it to the world. Okay, it is illegal to do that. So for the details, you want to read the agreement, read the DMCA. It gives software vendors a lot of power to sue people.
That's overstated. A lot of power.
A lot of power. Yeah, because they can lump everything under security, and for security reasons, we cannot let you do da-da-da. Yep.
What if you weren't the one to find it, but somebody else went about it? So you never made the end user agreement?
I think it would be great, but if you tell anybody else, you will be definitely liable. So the distribution of the information is liable. You cannot just distribute the information.